Hello and welcome to the Bestseller Experiment, where we continue to discover what makes a bestseller and inspire you to start, finish and publish your book. I'm Mark DeVoe.
And I'm Mark State, and as always, a whopping great thank you to all you wonderful people out there who keep this podcast going with your support. If you want to support the podcast, go to bestsellerexperiment.com/support. There you can find hundreds of hours of extra material, good stuff that we keep behind for you, special people. And there's all sorts of deep dives on extraordinary subjects that are just going to make you a better writer, frankly. And if you want me and Mr. D as your coaches, pop over to academybestsellerexperiment.com for the Bestseller Academy. There you're going to find an amazing community of people all doing great courses and sharing work and doing amazing things. And I tell you, hang around at the end, because I've got so much good news from Academates this week in the social media wins. You're just going to go, well, it's a no-brainer. I have to sign up. It's as simple as that. So, do it now. Anyway, Mr. D, how are you?
I'm doing great, Mark. We have got crazy rainstorms, something called an atmospheric river. Never heard of that, but it means tons of rain. And bears climbing over our fence, just literally crushing them. They just like, whatever. Oh. And yeah, so tons of repairs to do today. It's a bit bonkers. And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that we don't get any telegraph poles collapsing on us whilst we do this podcast, because that has happened in the past. And we've had a few power outs here. But yeah, exciting times. It's like nature at its... But people always say, oh, it rains so much here. And then you remember that, like West Canada, and particularly Vancouver Island, Vancouver area where I live, it's a rainforest. So like I think it used to be just solid rainforest. So we're living in a rainforest. So what would we expect? But yeah, it's amazing. Lovely time of year though. I love this time of year. And you've got a lot going on this time of year as well, haven't you?
Yes, I got a whole bunch of events. Now, because what I've realized, it's taken me 7 years to figure this out, is that people don't necessarily listen to the podcast on the Monday that it comes out. Some of them listen to it a week later. I've had a couple of people, they've heard about events, they've gone, I wish you'd mentioned that earlier. So I'm just I'll put a link in the show notes, because I keep all my events on a page on my blog. But I've got a whole bunch of things coming up. So I'm going to be at the MCM Comic Con at the end of October, 27th to 29th. I've got a table the whole weekend selling my books there. I'm doing on the 2nd of November, I'm doing an interview with the author Leslie Ann Jones about her book Fly Away Paul, which is about Paul McCartney and Wings, which is absolutely brilliant. That's at the Little Green Bookshop in Herne Bay. Then, as part of the British Library's fantasy series of events, Fantasy Realms of Imagination, I'm doing 2 Surrey Library events. So on 16th of November, I'm going to be at Guildford Library with Alice Chow, who's been on this podcast, and Jen Williams, who's been on this podcast. That's Guildford Library, 16th of November. And then on the 30th of November, I'm going to be talking to the man, the legend, Robert Rankin at Hawley Library as well. So there's a whole bunch of events.
It's like a world tour, mate.
There's a lot going on in November.
You're going to get T-shirts put up. Like Guildford Library, Hawley Library.
I'll be selling merch. Don't worry. Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant! Wow, that's exciting.
But yeah, there's a link in the show notes to my diary, and it's all
fantastic.
So, yeah, busy month.
And do you know what I was doing this morning at 6 o'clock in the morning? Those mornings where you wake up and your mind is I know, right? My mind was just exploding with ideas. I wrote a dream declaration, Mr. Stay.
Oh, let's have it.
No, I can't give it to you right now. It's in draft, and it's way too massive. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Such a tease.
No, I tell you what though, I know people are thinking like, you're never going to tell us anything. I'm going to start beginning next year. I'm going to start a reveal of what's going on here. But I just want to excite people. Okay. I'm going to put myself, I mean, we've talked about doing this nonfiction book for, over the last couple of months and really going to, I put out a call to nonfiction authors this week, people on the podcast, audience members, listeners who are interested in writing a nonfiction book. And what I've decided to do is I want to bring 12 people with me on this journey who also want to write their nonfiction book alongside me. And people have started sending in little applications. They tell me a little about their book. And it's so exciting to see how the different ideas that people have come up with. And the focus is a book that you want to change someone's perspective, a book that you might want to change someone's viewpoint, or even a book that might in some way change the world in a little way. So that's the focus. So if you're interested in joining me, it's going to be absolutely bonkers, and it's going to be like we did the first season. It's going to be this year challenge. How do can I write the book in a year? but bringing people along with us. It's going to just
Very,
be
very exciting. Now, let me see if I've got this straight. So you are going to be leading 12 disciples. You're going to change the world. So could I be Judas?
Yeah, actually, I hadn't thought of it like
You'll
that.
have to grow a beard.
Yeah. Oh, maybe my attire will start to change on the podcast over the next few weeks.
Robes.
I know.
Sandals.
Well, look, if we're gonna, oh my gosh, yeah. Well, I think we'll be handing out disco crisps or maybe nachos or something. But no, it's actually, you know what? I say 12. Maybe it could be 13. Maybe it could be 7. It depends how many people want to do this. But the fact is I think it's going to be fun to bring some people along the journey, because I can kind of talk a little bit about what they're up to. And the breadth of ideas is just blowing me away already. So I really want to hear from you if you're interested. It's for people who've like either, they've always had ideas of something they've wanted to write. Like me, it's like they want, okay, now is the time. You've got to get this book done. And this is where I'm at in life. I've just got to get this book done now. It's like my mission. It's got to happen. So get over to academy.bestsellerexperiment.com and click on the non-fiction button at the top of the page. There's a little button where you can kind of send me a message.
Do it, because we need change for good in the world at the moment, do we not?
Well, this is partly where it's coming from. As I've been working on this for the last 6 months as kind of concepts, ideas. Obviously, the Ukraine war has been carrying on for a long time, but then all the stuff that's happening in Israel right now and Palestine is just, I think it's a little bit overwhelming for people. And then you chuck into everything, chuck in the economy situation. People are struggling. There's just a lot of heaviness. And what I want to try to do is create a tiny little bit of counterbalance on the other side. I think that's one of the ways that we can respond to this. Everyone's saying, I feel helpless, I don't know what to do. Well, come out into the world and tell a positive story that might help people, that might shape and change the world. And, it will have an effect over time. If everyone gets out there and starts writing their book, it does have an effect, as we know. I mean, I think about all the books I've read, and you must feel the same, Mark, all the books I've read that have really shaped how I think and educated me about the bigger pictures out there. And this is really important stuff. This is, I'm excited and I'm feeling incredibly inspired and motivated. But man, this dream declaration is, you're going to laugh when you hear it, because you're going to be like, you're never going to ever do that in a million years. But you know what? I'm going to think, I'm just going to go for it because life's too short. So anyway, good. I will reveal all this, folks. Just stick with the podcast. I'll reveal this drip feeding over time as I work it out myself. But yeah, brilliant stuff. Anyway, good. Talking of crazy big stuff, our guest this week has cannot believe the story that you're about to hear, folks, and the accomplishments that our author has made. So tell us about this week's guest, Mark.
This week's guest is Ivy Ngeow, who was born and raised in Malaysia. She's a multi-award-winning author. Her latest novel, The American Boyfriend, was longlisted for the Avon X Mushens Entertainment Prize for Commercial Fiction for Writers of Colour 2022. Ivy is a musician. She's, as well as fiction, loads of fiction. She's written non-fiction cookery books, diet books, interior design books. She sells tie-in merch for fiction. She is a powerhouse of creativity, and this was such a fun interview. And we discuss, amongst many other things, we discuss the effect of moving into a house full of books when she was just a child, why she's okay with rejections, and why there's more to writing than just typing.
Fantastic. You're going to love this interview, folks. Let's settle in and have a listen to Mark chatting with the absolutely wonderful Ivy Ngeow.
Ivy Ngeow, welcome to the Bestseller Experiment. How are you today?
I'm feeling great. Thanks very much, Mark.
My absolute pleasure. Now, you've got a fantastic new book out, The American Boyfriend. We'll talk about that in a second. You've also had an extraordinary career to date. We'll talk about music as well. Very excited to talk about that, plus your writing routine and stuff like that. But yeah, tell us about The American Boyfriend.
The American Boyfriend is my Asian domestic psychological thriller, which I wrote 2 years ago in November 2021. It's got a Asian female protagonist who goes abroad to meet her online paramour. the titular boyfriend, and gets into serious danger.
Excellent stuff. And it's listeners, I'll put a link in the show notes. There's an excellent little trailer for this as well, which you've put together. What I love about the story is it's a very, very commercial thriller. It's really, really page-turning stuff, but there's a kind of a mother-daughter thing going on there, isn't there? Because Phoebe, the main character, her mother is kind of I don't think she actually appears in the story, but she's very present in the story as well. Can you talk about that a bit?
She's like a character who never appears but appears in every scene, in every chapter, that because she's really close to her mother, and because her mother comes from an immigrant background, she feels that it's something that brings them together, because she's now also in her third culture, which, she's no longer in Malaysia or China. Mm-hmm. She's in the UK, and now she's trying to navigate her fourth, which is the American culture. So she feels quite alienated and isolated. So the voice of her mother becomes especially strong. And now that she's middle-aged, even though she doesn't really like it, she's turning into her mother. And she knows this because she's thinking the same things when she looks at her daughter. So it's transferring down.
Yeah, I think it's whatever culture you're from, that's a very relatable fear that you're turning into your mother or turning into your father.
There's always that feeling as well. Like, we are all a bit afraid of our mothers, aren't we? A bit. Yeah. Even if we're very close to them, and especially if you're very close to them, you're definitely going to be afraid and wondering what you should do in certain situations. And also, what if they don't approve? Mm-hmm. Because usually they won't approve. Like, whatever you're thinking of, cut that out, because you're not going to get the approval from back home.
And this idea of moving to another culture, and as you say, in this case, it's her fourth culture. She's moved to Florida, and there are all these kind of things that may seem everyday to Floridians. The idea of just being able to go into a supermarket and buy a gun and things like that. Mm-hmm. Talk about that. Talk about how that came into the story.
I think that as somebody who is not very familiar with this guy, but decides to take the plunge, I think that she wants to take the chances because she's really interested in him. Therefore, she's prepared to accept this culture that is strange. Mm-hmm. And in Florida, in Key West, the motto is "Wear the weird GoPro." So she knows it's going to be a little bit weird, and she was totally surprised when she sees the gun cabinet in the supermarket. Mm. So she started to wonder, as I did when I first saw that this is you start to accept that this is another culture's reality. It's their daily reality. You can buy a sandwich and milk and a gun all at the same time, on your lunch break. And it's so easy. And anyone who has the means can acquire a gun. So I think that's her first realization, that she's somewhere very strange.
Excellent stuff. Now, The American Boyfriend, I think I'm right, is your fifth novel. And you wrote it with a competition in mind. Is that correct?
Yes, I entered the Writers of Color competition, which was organized by Avon's and Martians Entertainment. Mm-hmm. And I got on the long list of 12. And it really gave me hope, because I thought that means that I really should sharpen it up. And this prize was for commercial fiction. So I thought, okay, we're halfway there. So I'm going to make it much better than what it was when I submitted it.
Okay, because you mentioned commercial fiction there. I was going to say, did the competition sort of give you some impetus to write something that was more commercial than what you'd written before, or was this something that you'd always wanted to do?
I think commercial fiction gets a bad name, doesn't it? The word commercial is not good. It's like a mall, isn't it? Commercial center.
Right.
It feels mercenary. I think that it's actually another word for popular fiction. It's very popular. I mean, we watch TV. I mean, who doesn't watch TV? We watch TV. We watch movies. They're commercial. Yeah. So I feel that, that's something that appeals to me, because I love strong, gripping narratives, and stories that we as regular people can relate to, stories about ordinary people. I think that's essential in commercial fiction.
Absolutely. I saw a lovely video on your Twitter feed recently where you saw your book in the W.H. Smith's in the departure lounge. Was it at Singapore Airport?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
And you're talking about how you'd grown up seeing books in airports and always wanted to see your book in an airport. Tell us about that moment. And again, listeners, I'll put a link in the show notes so you can check it out.
So I did my first flight at 12 with my mum, and we went to Bangkok. And I know it sounds very far away, but I grew up in Malaysia. It's like saying I flew to France. I mean, it's near. It's just the next country along. So it was really exciting, and like it was the best thing. And I can still feel that the takeoff, the buzz of leaving the ground behind you, leaving everything behind you, and you're just trusting everything to the pilots and to flights, which is like it's a miracle in itself. So I still feel that each time, and I travel, and I feel that it's so exciting. There's nothing like flying, and when I was an adult and saw commercial fiction in airports, I thought I would love that. I mean, I would love the fact that you are somewhere else, you're between countries, and you can find something to in which you could escape, like books. I mean, I think there's so much perfume and cigarettes you could look at. So I thought, yeah, they're all the same, right? So books are so exciting, and each time there will be different books. Each time you fly, it's not like the same Chanel or whatever. It's each time you're going to get different books, and to me, it's so exciting. So always wanted to see my books in an airport, and I wondered how it's done. I had no idea, like who buys them, how do they get in an airport? So that day was very special because I got to go through the VIP or staff route, whatever they're called, and got ushered down some corridor, and then suddenly I'm out there again in the area with the shops, the what do you call that? The
airside area,
the duty free, yeah, the duty free, yeah.
Fantastic. And you were there signing, and they were piled high, weren't they? You were signing all those books.
I was signing them all because they were for other airports. The piled high bit was not just for that shop. They would be like, distributed. They would be divided up and taken to the other airport shops. And I thought, this is so exciting. I actually talked to passengers who were saying, I think they probably thought I was a vandal because I was like signing them. I was like, where's security? What's this woman doing? So I signed them, and I had a chat to passengers, and they were amazed that they'd never met an author in an airport. And to me, that day was also interesting because W.H. Smith said that they've never done this before either. This is weird too. The airport security and everything, like to get through to do it, unusual.
Yeah, it is unusual. I can tell you, as someone who worked for a publisher, I can tell you it's very difficult to get books into airport stores because there's such restricted space. They only take things they think are, and I'm going to use that dirty word again, commercial.
The C word, commercial.
But let's I mean, you hit the Straits Times bestseller lists on the opening week, and you were tied with Colleen Hoover. I mean, that's off to an incredible start. And then you did a book tour of Southeast Asia. So you must be just over the moon with the reception.
Oh yeah, I thought it was very heartwarming experience, really special, and something that I kind of never dreamed of. I wouldn't say I've always dreamt that I'm going to go on this tour. Like, it's something that I've never dreamed of. I never expected the reception, and every single event I had that usual author's fear that no one's going to turn up, or 3 people are going to turn up and they can't leave because I can see them. I see those 3 people. It was awful, the awful fear each time. And thankfully, I mean, that happened. That didn't happen. It was packed. The venues were packed, and I had loads of questions, loads of people selfieing, and lots of signing. And it was very celebratory. I mean, I just felt like I was part of them, and they were part of me. I'm part of that community. That they were celebrating my book with me.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Let's go back to where it all started, Ivy, because as I understand it, you moved into a new home when you were a child, and the previous owners had left all their books behind. Tell us about that.
I was 9, and we moved into this big house, and it's a little bit rundown. It's really old, 1949. I mean, it's not like some glitzy palace. It's a rundown old house from the late 40s, and the old owner was a lawyer, and I don't know what happened. He must have moved to another country because he just left everything behind, and he had a floor to ceiling of bookshelves.
Wow.
Yes, floor to ceiling, and they were filled with books. But unfortunately, I read them because I thought, well, this is it. This is my library. I might as well read them. But they were really boring. They were like, the history of Malaya from 1880 to 1948 or something. It was just like that kind of book, and all his law manuals and texts. I just thought, this is very boring. I think I need new books. This is, I don't think I'm going to read. Oh yeah, there was atlases as well. So I got very interested in there are places all over the world. I started to travel using just my eyes and my mind. It was quite eye-opening, and I think it was Paul Theroux who said that the most luxurious place is actually in your mind. So if you can travel with your eyes, you've been there. And it kind of resonated with me because I first traveled in that room, like reading all these books. There was a few novels as well, and I think there was some salacious stuff, like commercial stuff from the those sort of like very luridly described sort of 50s pulp fiction.
Right.
That the lawyer had left behind. So I read those as well, and probably not really suitable for me because by then I was 12. By the time I got through all these books, I was like 12. And my mom signed me up during the same time to a library. So I got my first library card, and I think that's when I thought, hey, these books are much better. I think there's more to life than law. So,
what sort of stuff were you reading? What sort of stuff were you bringing back from the library?
I started off like a lot of kids reading children's fiction, like Enid Blyton, Agatha Christie. I started to read a lot of mysteries because I felt that that was the progress from children's fiction, like solving crimes and all that. Then adults solve crime. So I just felt that was the natural progression. And also later on, when I was a young adult, a lot of literary fiction. I read Virginia Woolf, Ernest Hemingway, Harper Lee. I read a lot of the usual classics, modern classics.
And I believe your storytelling career started when you were telling stories to entertain your brothers. Is that correct?
Oh, yes, I did. So during the time when we were in this house, my brothers obviously can't really read the law books. So I decided to illustrate and tell them stories, and I drew diagrams and stuff. At the same time as joining the library, because I used to bring home books as well. And, when they were no good, I used to retell the endings like, oh yeah, they survived. They're all fine. Yeah, the princess did not get married. Oh, I used to just make it up, thinking that, well, they can't read and they love stories. So I'm gonna have to make some improvements here.
Okay, very good. Excellent. And moving on from that, when did you start writing seriously? When did the bug really take, your writing bug?
I started when I was 16, and I entered a national competition in the New Straits Times short story competition. And in those days, I say in those days, like I'm really old. It's not that long ago. Not that long ago, there was no such thing as YA. I mean, it's you're either an adult or a child.
Yeah.
Basically, if you're after 12, you're like, it's adult fiction. There's no YA. So I entered into the adult category because I was 16, and I was very chuffed that I was highly commended. I think there were only like 50 which were highly commended, and then the usual first 3 prizes or whatever. So I thought, hey, that's not bad. I'm, in the 50. So the prize is not really a prize, but it was just a trip to a writer's workshop in KL, in Kuala Lumpur. So it was my first time, and my parents had always been very, very supportive and encouraging. And even though I was 16, they bought me a ticket to go to KL on my own. I went there as a 16-year-old. I don't know whether it's allowed now. I'm not. I think probably you could take a train to like Liverpool or whatever, couldn't you? Like alone. Yeah. So that was the distance, like going from London to Liverpool, like, quite a long way. And to do this weekend workshop.
And what did you learn there? What happened there? What?
I think it's probably wasted on me because I was 16, and the rest were just middle-aged people who were highly commended. So I have no idea what was going on. And then after that, they went out and got pissed. So that's my whole memory of the workshop. Like, okay, talk about characters and plot. Hey, let's go to the pub now. We're done. And I'm like, okay, but I can't. And so I think that I think maybe it was not the right, I don't know, age group or whatever for me. Yeah. And I think that put me off. I didn't write for a long time because when I went to uni, I don't remember writing a word. I always read, but I don't remember writing a word until a long way off. Like, and then I started submitting again short stories, probably during the time when I was working.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, talking about writing and then going out and getting drunk, that does at least set you up for crime festivals and things like that. That's basically how they operate now. So.
Well, now I realize that is the training. That's the workshop.
Exactly.
Talk about characters, talk about settings, and that's it. Yeah. We're done now.
Off to the pub. Yeah. Am I right as well that, because this is a sort of a family business, is it right that your father critiques your early work as well? He gave you feedback?
I think they both did because my father was a big reader. Mm-hmm. I don't think he read the law books. I mean, he wasn't, but he did like to read my work. And my mom was very helpful too. She used to type up my stories. I used to dictate to her when I was a teenager. She doesn't really read my work or critiques. My dad did that, but she did the backup. Like, she really supported me. Like, she was on board the train ticket and she typed up my work. And she can't even type. She was using 2 fingers on the Olivetti. She can't type, and she was doing it. But she was correcting like my grammar. She was correcting me as we went along. We sort of self-edited.
That's amazing.
It's amazing. I didn't realize that was writing. I always thought it was typing, because I thought that the writing was like the storytelling bit, like what I was doing with my brother, like writing by hand or drawing diagrams. And I didn't realize that it could take so many levels of work, of development, of the plot, of the layering of the story. I was doing that with my mum. I didn't even realize that.
Fantastic. Well, let's talk about how you got to your debut novel, which was Cry of the Flying Rhino. How did you get to that point? Because I believe, am I right in thinking you had an encounter with an agent who read the first 10,000 words, then asked to see the rest?
Oh, yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Tell us about that.
I had an agent. So I did my MA at Middlesex University, and there I won a prize. I won a literary prize, and I was very hopeful. I never thought anybody would like read my work, let alone give me a prize. And it was a big cash prize. So then I realized that, I'm very happy with this, because the judge was Penelope Lively. Oh. And she said she had never read anything like this. This is really, she was very, very encouraging and really good to me. And I couldn't believe it, because I'm not even from this country. I was writing in my second language. So I was feeling very encouraged by this. And I thought, okay, I'm going to write a novel. So I think that's one of the first errors, isn't it? Like, you write a short story and it's great. And now I'm going to write a novel. I'm done now. I'm not doing anymore. I'm finished. So I wrote a novel, and then I got the agent almost immediately. Again, I think that, there's something to be said for rejections, because this agent, although helped me, I don't think she never got me a deal, because the first book was published through my own submission.
Right.
She didn't get me a deal after a long time, like a couple of years. And because I was inexperienced, I didn't know you could leave I thought I had to be with her until I die. I didn't know you could leave. So, and then one day another writer said, you can just say, yeah, bye. So, okay. So I did that. And I kept asking her why, I didn't realize that maybe it was very literary. So I think that it needed something. It needed, when you write literary fiction, it's got to have that, it's got to have that crucial idea. It's got to have that idea that makes it totally different from any other, from series, from any other kind of genres where they follow tropes. Literary fiction has the trope that is no trope. It's more about the all-consuming idea. So I don't think that was the right time for me or the right agent. And there is such a thing, and people think that I'm going to just get an agent and that's it. I'm done now. You guys do everything. There's no such thing. It's got to be the right relationship. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. No, I've gone through a few agents myself, Ivy, so I know.
Okay,
definitely,
yeah, then you know what I mean.
Absolutely. So tell us about Cry of the Flying Rhino. Did you self-publish that through your own imprint? Is that how you?
No. So the Cry of the Flying Rhino was it was published in Hong Kong by Provis,
right?
And that I submitted it. And I won a prize for it, which I was, again, very chuffed. I won 10,000 Hong Kong dollars. So I flew out to Hong Kong. My whole family came, my parents as well. So it was 6 years ago, I think. 6 years ago. So we all went to Hong Kong. It was really nice. It's lovely. And it's such an exciting city. I don't know if you've been there, but it's so thrilling. It's like being in a game, It's so glittery and fast moving, and it's so like it's sort of vintage and high tech at the same time. So I really enjoyed it, and I thought this is very special, to have my first book come out here and to go to the award ceremony. Since then, I didn't have an agent. Like I had no agent after that.
Right. Okay. Well, your second novel, Heart of Glass. Now, like me, you're an Unbound author. You published that through Unbound.
That's how I know you. That's how I know of you.
Yes. And so that was crowdfunding. Tell us about that experience. What was that like for you?
I would say I have mixed feelings about it. It's good in the sense that I have learned so much about finding audience. It's bad in the sense that I probably found the wrong audience, because the audience wanted to support me, but not my book, my project, because the theme of the project is something that people can't support again. So I found that the audience was not as lasting as if they came to you on their own without having to support you,
Yeah.
I don't know whether you found that as well with the.
Yeah, I found that because I wrote what might be the first in a series of books, and I was in two minds about whether or not I should do the second book with Unbound. And I saw that people who did second and third books with Unbound really struggled, because it was the kind of thing. It's like if you have a colleague in an office who runs a marathon, you'll put some money up and you'll sponsor them for the marathon. But if they're doing one every week, you kind of get the novelty wears off, So I think it is a similar thing. They were supporting me. But, when the book goes out there, and Unbound made a beautiful book, great cover, brilliantly edited.
They are very good at that. Yeah, the production is top class.
Absolutely, yeah. But it's just kind of thrown out there and left to survive, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think in terms of longevity, I don't think it will. I think it's good for that kind of project where maybe it's unique as well, it's a one-off, or maybe it's for a good cause. You already work for a good cause, and this is your, this is your end game. Yeah. You want to play it out. It's like a big show, and I think that's fine, because you're going to get the top quality product at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you did you get your rights back to that as well? Because
I've got my rights back because it's been 5 years now.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, me too. And it's and I'm working on a sequel now, so that will get out there. So yeah. After Heart of Glass, what happened then? What was the next move for you?
I started an imprint, and I published my my third and fourth novels, and they're more like experimental type. They are trying to be commercial, but not fully yet. Like a bit commercial and a bit literary. But I thought that, hey, this is my chance to do what I wanted, to learn design, make my own covers, and because I already do design in my day job, so I thought I might as well put another arm on this and do graphic design. And so I think I learned a lot through that. And the publishing imprint, Leopard Print, also publishes others.
Right. Okay. And what sort of books are you looking for Leopard Print?
We have published one memoir and an anthology of Asian short stories. So I think at the moment we're doing something quite eclectic, but definitely on for marginalized writers.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic stuff. But here we are. We've got The American Boyfriend, published by Penguin. It's got that lovely penguin on the spine. It's been a smash hit. So how has that changed your approach to writing? You said, some of the previous books were a little literary, a little commercial. Has it changed your attitude and the way that you write at all, having had this hit?
Most definitely. During the time when I was doing Leopard Print, I've already was on the on the journey towards writing much, much better books. Like I wanted to write top quality books that would be accepted by the top 5, because I realized that I can. I mean, I have won prizes before. I know that we all have this imposter syndrome and we feel really awful. Like, what if it's really, really bad? Or what if it's just an awful book that you just brought out? That kind of feeling that, you don't really know, because you're still building your audience. So how do you know? It's very subjective. But then I wanted to make sure that I was writing much better. I was actually retraining myself in the last 5 years to write better and shorter books, because I wanted books that would appeal to people who didn't read very much. So I wanted to write shorter sentences, paragraphs, chapters. The whole book has to be shorter. And they'll think, oh, that's very thin. I'm going to read that. I'm in a reading slump. I haven't read anything for 74 years. Now I'm going to read this. So, I feel that was an aim. And I never aim to be, to be traditionally published. My aim was to write much better books. So I did all the things that you're supposed to do. Attend courses, read tons, read like 100 books in that year or whatever. Just reading top books to make sure I knew how it's done. So, and I think that because I was with Penguin, who are the best publisher I've ever had,
right?
They've made it a bestseller. I mean, of course, it's a collaborative effort, because I work very, very hard at promoting and publicity and marketing. But I still believe that no amount of buzz or hype or publicity can sell a bad book. It's got to be so good that the publisher picks it up and thinks, this is, imagine how many hundreds of manuscripts they receive a day. It's got to be one that can just stand out, and after the first page, they're hooked, and they think, this is such a great idea. I want to read the whole thing. That's what you want from somebody, like real excitement. And I'm still excited when sometimes I pick up a book and I think, wow, this is so good. I can't wait to read to the end. And that's the kind of emotion that you want to get from a reader. I think it's emotion more than anything. If you can get the emotion from page 1, that's it. They'll read the whole thing.
I think that's absolutely right, actually. I think it is. You get people on the hook and you get them emotionally engaged. They'll go with
emotionally
you anywhere.
Engaged.
Yeah, absolutely. When you were reading those 100 books and honing your craft and learning, I mean, what were the biggest lessons learned, and who were the authors that you thought they've got it nailed? They've sussed it.
I read, so I started reading in all genres to make sure that I'm not missing out on anything.
Right.
And then I realized that the ones were most gripping were the emotionally gripping ones, like Gone Girl.
Yeah.
So they had that hook.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was learning what is that hook. So I learned from Gone Girl. I learned from Lisa Jewell,
Right.
Frida McFadden, Jennifer Rose.
Brilliant.
Colin Hoover, these five. So these are like authors that I enjoy reading because I feel that they're giving me what I want, which is like kind of like, well, they're thrillers. So they're going to give me a bit of excitement on every page. And they're page turners. So I'm learning from these bestsellers. I know your podcast is called The Bestseller Experiment, which is great. I love the name. I just love, your hook, to be honest. That's your hook.
This is
I mean, who wouldn't want to listen to it?
It's fantastic to hear this because it's so nice to hear someone who's gone and studied those bestsellers, who's looked at them to figure out what makes them work and then applied it to their own writing. That is kind of what we're all about. I want to talk about your writing routine as well, because as I understand it, you write by hand. Is that in the first place? Is that still part of your process?
Yeah, I write by hand, same as because I work in design. So I draw by hand first. Like it has to be a sketch or whatever. It's basically, I like diagrams. Diagrams make it really clear for me. So I can have flow charts. I draw bar charts. I draw grids, like storyboarding. Whatever diagrams make sense, I'll get them down. And that's my first, that's the zero draft. I wouldn't say it's first,
Gotcha.
It's a zero draft.
Yeah.
So once I kind of got the story worked out, because if you have diagrams, you can find the hook very fast. If you're starting to use words and all that, you're going to get cluttered because language clutters our, ideas and thoughts, and they're not going to make it clearer. They're going to make it worse because you keep having to fill in sentences and whatever. So, but the diagram, you can see it very clearly. The picture says 1,000 words, right?
Yeah.
So with the diagram, you get your hook, your idea, so you can map out like your what should happen at the end. What is the narrative arc? How should this character end up at the end? What will they get? Did they aim to get it, or did they not? So so those are more important to me than the first draft, which is just typing. That's the draft that my mother. I can hear my mother's voice there. She'll be helping me bang out the gist of the gist. So that's the narrative gist, like the rough, like the worst one, the first draft, like the one that no one should even look at and stuff. And then I kind of work on that's that would be on my big Mac. And for the further drafts, I tend to use the little Mac, the MacBook, so that I can take it, into my office. I have an office space or a cafe, or take it into bed or whatever. I can work somewhere else, but I always have the diagrams next to me. The first time I ever saw it, like my zero draft, I will still have it with me to remind me, what the hell I'm doing. Yeah.
What I love about that is with the diagrams, you're starting really big. It's like a big overall vision, and then even the devices get smaller. So you move to the iMac, and then you move to the MacBook, and it sort of gets more and more intimate as you get along, more and more detailed. Yeah, that's terrific.
Very funny. It's I love that. I love that visual. I mean, you created the sequence.
Yeah. That's terrific. Now, listen, I know you're in a band, Satsuma, and my co-presenter, Mr. D, he has a band as well, and he's constantly making references, relations between music and writing fiction and creating generally. How does your music and making inform your writing, and does your writing inform your music making? How are the two sort of related for you?
It's a very good question, because I think all the creative processes are related. I know that people say, "Oh no, it can't be. How can baking be related to whatever, painting?" They're all related, because you have to start with the concept, the idea, the hook. And for my music writing, I usually start with beats, because beats give me a sense of the next stage, the pacing. And the feel, the mood of it. Like, is it going to be very dark, atmospheric? Is it going to be, like a film, like a soundtrack, sort of orchestral? So from the beats, I can tell what's next. And I might even switch it off when I'm putting on the other layers. When I'm writing the layers, I might even switch off the beat. But it's going to be always there because I think it's set to the BPM, and I'm ready to go. Even like the guitar soloing or the piano, I play both guitar and the keys. So I try to write the parts that suit the beats. So it always comes back to that for me, and that's it's the heartbeat of my song. I don't draw diagrams with music. So in that sense, I'm not going to, because I'm using music isn't visual for me. It's all auditory. So I try to work it out based on things that match, that go together. So it's more like design in the sense that it's like, okay, this typography goes with this artwork, or this color palette, goes with these shapes. So it's more like that, like mixing and matching all these items that belong to like a wardrobe, for example. It feels like I'm making up a complete like outfit or whatever, like a meal. I think that's quite a good. I think that's a good way to put it.
I like it.
Put
I like
together
it very much.
all the
yeah. Excellent stuff. Fantastic, Ivy. It's been an absolute joy speaking to you. What's coming next after The American Boyfriend? What's lined up after that?
I've started to write another psychological thriller that is set in London, and I usually work on the zero draft and first draft. I try to start a project in November because I think that's it's bad weather, and it's also NaNoWriMo. I don't know whether I like doing NaNoWriMo because that's the aim is 50,000 words. Obviously, I never get there. I usually can do about probably 20,000, and that's when it stops. So at least I'll get there. And the last 20,000 words, I did write it during the last November, the NaNoWriMo last year. It's been a year and I haven't touched it because I was too busy after getting signed.
Right.
And I think you know what that's like, isn't it? That's what David Bowie said, that when I'm an artist, I'm 100% artist. And when I'm a businessman, I'm 100% businessman.
Right.
So therefore, it's just impossible to put in the creative drive.
Yeah. Well, especially if you're touring all over, Southeast Asia. That's incredible stuff. Well, listen, we look forward to it with bated breath, Ivy. This is just fantastic. But until then, folks, grab a copy of The American Boyfriend. It's out there now. It's an absolute page-turning, gripping thriller. It's terrific stuff. Ivy, it's been an absolute delight. Come back and speak to us again next time, will you?
Thank you so much, Mark. Really enjoyed that. It's fantastic to chat with you.
What are your writing dreams? Finishing that book, quitting the day job, becoming a best-selling author? Well, over 4 years, we've studied the advice of over 300 best-selling authors who've collectively sold over 500 million books. And we are excited to announce the Bestseller Academy. If you're ready to take your writing to the next level with accountability, craft, and coaching, your bestseller dreams are now only a click away. To find out more and apply, visit bestsellerexperiment.com/academy. That's bestsellerexperiment.com/academy. Do you know what, Mark? About an hour before I listened to that interview, I mentioned earlier I was working on my dream declaration, and one of the things I wrote down was about airport bookstores. Right. And then I couldn't believe it when I heard, and I think this is I don't know if, I mean, were you inspired by airport bookshops when you were younger? Did you always kind of get excited being around them and always go?
Absolutely. Just being airside is exciting. But
yes.
Because look, listeners, in the extended version, we're going to do a whole thing about routes to market. And we're going to include airside bookshops in that. About, the high street bookstore and online is not just the only place where your books are sold. And airside is a big component of whether or not your book gets acquired, and not every book gets into them. So there is a kind of special thrill of seeing those books on airside. And I never, funny enough, it's one of the accounts I never looked after. I never looked after an airside account. But I had colleagues who did. And on a few occasions, you have to get security passes and everything, to go airside. And one of the best times ever was when we took Jeff Hurst, legendary England footballer who scored the hat-trick in 1966. Because when I was at Headline, we did his autobiography and we took him airside and he did a signing. I mean, this is, Ivy's going... I think it was it Singapore Airport she did her signing. She said, W.H. Smith said, we don't do this very often. And they really don't. And it was like, she's up there with Jeff Hurst as one of the people they're getting in to do signings. So, that was fantastic day. Really good day. Nice man, Jeff. Very nice man.
We've been working on milestones for authors over a number of years, and books. Getting your book in an airport bookstore is on the list. It's been on the list.
Absolutely.
But what I'm going to add to the list is doing a book signing, like signing books at an airport bookstore. And I just had this visual, like, she talked about this massive pile of books in the bookstore, and I'm like, it brings a whole new meaning to the word. The Mile High Club, doesn't it? I mean, you could actually, if you could do that, like there's something about the type of books they have at the airport. Do they still are they still different when do they still pre-release them before they come out?
Well, I want to talk about this in the extended version because there's a whole thing in this. What I will tell you though is that whenever certain authors, who I won't name, but have been interviewed on this podcast, when certain authors flew in to certain airports, the poor account manager was told, right, so-and-so's flying in. You've got to make sure their books are on the shelves because they're going to check. And if they weren't on there, someone got their ear chewed off. So there's that side of it as well. The big famous authors come in and they're like, yeah, I flew into Gatwick. None of my books were there. What's going on?
So maybe that's all bookshops are in airports. They're just authors that are flying around, and they're actually just usually empty shelves, but it's all these like panicking account managers filling with their books. Love it. Oh my gosh. I think it's great. I always remember as a kid, I used to get excited. Like, I think it was even Stephen King novels. I'd always look out because you'd buy a novel and it would be a pre-release, or, it wouldn't be available in the bookstores yet. And you felt really special. But loads to chat about in the extended, folks, if you're interested in that. I absolutely love it. I also think that the story of Ivy moving into that massive house, and I have this visual of this little kind of 9-year-old girl walking in.
Vast shelves.
I'm thinking like cathedral ceilings. This is where I went. And this kind of like, you can even just see the image of this tiny little, girl looking up at this like massive.
Like the scene from Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, there's like in one of those bookshops, so you've got one of those like ladders on wheels because you can't actually get up to those top shelves. But what an incredible start to her life in literature, to move into a house full of books. I just love that.
But don't forget, they are all boring books, like The History of the Economy of Malaysia, which if you're 9 years old isn't terribly interesting. Yeah. But it clearly fired her imagination. And I love the fact that she started telling stories to entertain her brothers, but would change and improve the endings when she didn't approve of them.
Brilliant.
It's just fantastic.
But it seems that introduction to all of that world of books, she talked about this idea of traveling in her mind. I love that analogy like obviously we all love to go away, we all love to go on holiday, but that's such a beautiful description of what a book enables us to do. It's like we literally, she talked about escapism and, just being able to like travel in your mind. And then she went to the library and then discovered where all the books that she wanted to read were.
Well, that's the thing. We all have access to a palace of books, and it's called a library, and it's all there for the taking, So I think even if we don't move into a big house with that Beauty and the Beast kind of library, there's usually one up the road, or there might be a mobile one that comes around, or it might be one in your school, So I always feel at home in a library. They've just revamped our one in Herne Bay. It's great. Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, it's lovely.
I have libraries. I have a special place. They have a special place in my heart, and I'm a big supporter of our libraries because I never want to see them disappear. I want them to grow and thrive, and I want to see them filled with kids, because that for me would be a representation of just the shift and change that they're making in the world, the next generations who are coming through.
Exactly. Yeah, you must have gone to the one in Leatherhead, the White Mansion House.
Oh, all the time. I went in there recently. I went in there this year because I literally I drove past Leatherhead Library and I just thought, and I literally stopped and I turned around and I went in, and it completely threw me because as a kid, you know how you kind of remember.
Was it massive in your memory when you were a kid?
It was massive.
It's a tiny little building now. Yeah.
It was massive, but I think if everyone thinks back now to their library of, the library you remember as a kid. First of all, like you say, yeah, it's like that scene of the 9-year-old going into the big house. Yeah. But everything about that library has nostalgia for me. The smell of the library, the feeling I got, the excitement I got going in there and going to the cassette racks and spinning the cassette racks and, taking out a cassette. Do you remember I used to take those
that's
cassettes
where I
home.
That's where I first got Pink Floyd's Momentary Lapse of Reason on cassette, right?
Yeah, I know that. I know the one.
Out like, and it folded out like an accordion. Yeah,
I remember seeing it on the rack.
Yeah, and do you want to know something? You want to know something weird? Right, a few years ago, Phil Manzanera, who's the guitarist in Roxy Music, got married there in that very building because they do registry.
Oh, it's the registry
office as well. He got married there. And David Gilmour from Pink Floyd was a guest. And Phil Manzanera wrote a song on A Momentary Lapse of Reason. He co-wrote One Slip with David Gilmour. So Pink Floyd trivia there. But weird coincidence. Anyway, carry on.
Mad. So, but I just everything about those childhood memories of the library, walking up with the big circular card. Did they have big like circular cards, or am I imagining that?
No, they were my cards. They were, because you had a piece of card that opened up and then you'd slip something in it. Do you remember that? You'd slip something in it. I do.
You take it to the desk. I can't remember how it worked. Anyway, when I went back there, it's probably been about 20 years since I'd actually been in it, and they completely have redone it. Like half of it. I was standing in there and I couldn't work out the orientation because it was such a weird
and it was
experience.
fiction and children's on the left and non-fiction on the right. Wasn't it?
Yeah. And the creaking floorboards.
Yes.
Right? They're still there.
And you go left, and round the corner was the science fiction section, which is where I used to find all my favourite books. And then I go over to non-fiction and find the books on ghosts, UFOs, and nuclear war, because I was a warped little boy.
Nuclear war, oh my God.
There was a book there on what happens in a nuclear war, and things like mustard gas. I was just hooked. I kept taking it out.
Into it. Do you know, I just had the weirdest thought, Mark. I just had the weirdest thought, because we really didn't get to know each other until I kind of, post-school adult life.
Yeah, so we must have bumped into each other.
We were probably in that library for hours together, standing next to each other, looking at books, walking past each other. I think that's probably how I knew of you, through our school friend group. But isn't that weird to think that we were just like, and here we are, like all these years later doing a podcast, probably very much influenced by all those books that we picked out.
No doubt, absolutely.
Just mad. So anyway, if you've got a favourite library that you want to shout out to us, we should probably do a whole special on Library Smart, because I love it. But if you have a favourite library that you want to shout out from maybe when you were a child, drop us a message through the website. Come over and click on the contact us. We want to hear about it, and maybe a little story about your favourite library and what that brings up for you. But I think looking at the other part of our education as younger was parent education, and how much our parents either did or didn't encourage us to read, and how much they took part in our kind of learning. And one thing that Ivy talked about was this wonderful story about her. I kind of sounded like her mum was her PA. It's like, take a letter, Mrs. Jones. I think of Barbara Cartland waltzing around in her flowery dress.
On the chaise longue.
I've just thought of another novel, darling. Just take, exactly. Just please, and because that's how she wrote a ton of her books. She just would read them to she'd speak them out loud to her PA. Yes. And I just think of this mum, but I think Ivy's mum, I think we have to give her more credit than being just a PA. I've got a sense that Ivy's mum saw a massive opportunity. She saw that obviously Ivy was fascinated with reading and writing, and it was an opportunity for her mum to engage with her on a project that she wanted to do. And I was thinking of what this is kind of called, and it's like this idea of parenting, mentoring, and educating your child because they've come up with the idea and it's an opportunity for you to engage with them. And I do this with my kids all the time. Like I would sit at the dinner table and talk about, a business idea or something, or try and teach them about an economics concept. Pretty boring meals sometimes at our house. But the kids would glaze over naturally, like Dad's off on one again. But then when my daughter wanted to set up a little bakery in the house, she wanted to sell bake cookies and sell cookies. And I said, oh, well, I can help you with that. And we sat down and I actually got her at 9 years of age building a spreadsheet with formulas to work out all the costs, peanut butter, chopped chips and, the flour, and we broke it all down. And then when she started taking orders, or she built a website, she started taking orders from the website, and she had like stock control spreadsheet at 9 years of age. Now, there's no way I could ever have sat her down and said, hey, let me teach you how to do spreadsheets.
You had your 9-year-old doing spreadsheet. I'm calling social services. But you're right. It's a fine line, isn't it? Because when you see your kids are interested in something, you don't want to come on too heavy because you'll just frighten them off.
Yeah.
They'll it's overwhelming. It's like, oh gosh, this is just too much, and they'll back away. But you've got to nurture it, haven't you? You've got to encourage it and make it think it's their idea. Because
well, I think that's what Ivy's mum was doing, because that's, to sit there and I'm sure there, she was obviously transcribing for Ivy and typing things, but I bet you that every session they did, there were lots of conversations about grammar, and the mum was kind of being her editor as she created her stories. So I think massive props to like any parent out there that sees that opportunity in their child to say, okay, let me engage with something the child's interested in, but I'm going to use it as an opportunity to kind of like teach them useful things that are going to be helpful in later life. So I think that's amazing. I mean, we talk about the Julies, the partners that support adult authors, but I think we don't put enough focus on the role of the parent and the teacher. I mean, there's teachers that, brilliant teachers that encourage kids to write stories and sit with them at lunchtimes. And, when they should be having their hour off, they sit with them and they maybe edit their story, or they read the story out to the class. And every time one of my kids' stories was read out in class, they always came back and, oh yeah, they read my story out. It's such an important part of that process. So, if you're a parent and you've got a child that you're finding it hard to engage with, you're finding it hard to like get them interested, like find what they're interested in and then meet them where they're at. And maybe there's another Ivy out there who's going to develop, into an incredible author in their adult years.
Fantastic. And apologies to any listeners you can hear creaking on my end. I think my daughter and her boyfriend are moving furniture around upstairs. It's like I'm on a galleon at sea.
And I've got rain drumming on my roof. So if you can hear the
up here as well as it's
unbelievable.
Like, storms picking up.
I can't hear any creaking, Marks. Okay, that's all good. Let's talk about emotion. We should reference this again because I think, was it even last week or 2 weeks ago?
Last week, Heather Morris.
Last week.
In the extended, I did the thing on writing on emotion. Yeah.
Exactly. But I love the way that Ivy talked about when you asked her how, what kind of genres did you read? And she said, I read all genres. But what I was always found in the books that I loved was that they were all about emotion. And she referenced a certain book that's had a little bit of a theme on this podcast called Gone Girl. And Mark, I stopped the podcast. I stopped the recording at that point. I thought, I can't write this down. So Mr. State, have you read Gone Girl yet?
Nope.
For anyone who's wondering why we're laughing, this has been, I don't know how many times I've asked you that question over the 7 years.
That first year, it was like every episode.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to have to put it out there, Mr. State, like as a dream declaration. Are you willing to take this on, like before Christmas? Are you willing? Would you have the time to audiobook even? Just to work out I've not read it. That's the other thing. I'm curious as to what.
I've seen the film. The film's brilliant.
Right. Okay.
But I probably should know.
Maybe someone should send us a synopsis about what the emotional element is in Gone Girl, because I'm curious, because obviously
I should read it and report back, shouldn't I? I should. I mean, look.
If you have time.
Look, I've met Gillian Flynn. I've read her other books. I've got a signed copy of one of her other books.
Really?
Yeah. I've just stopped reading. I tell you what, I can confess this now, because when I worked at Orion, and it was sales were through the roof. It was amazing. And I was just late to it. I hadn't got round to reading it. And everyone was banging on about how good it was. And you know, when everyone's telling you how brilliant something is, and you just go, well, why should I bother?
Well, also, you don't want to read it in case you feel disappointed by it. It's like when someone tells you about the amazing movie.
So now we're away from all the hype. You know, I'll happily give it a go. She's a great writer.
Maybe if you do read it, maybe that's the reason why she hasn't come on the podcast yet. She's just, if Mark's not going to
I tell you why she hasn't come on the podcast yet. It's because she hasn't written any novels since. She's been working in TV and film land. So she's been, because that's where she started. She started writing about TV and film. Then she wrote best-selling novels. And now she's off writing screenplays and TV shows. So
incredible. Incredible life. Well, there we go. Well, Gillian, if you're listening, you want to come on the show, you are very welcome. Let's just have a quick run through because there's so much. I've written so many notes on this interview. So, folks, as we always like to, with the extended, we're going to go deeper into the interview with Ivy and some of the things that have really interested us, and hopefully will be of use to you as authors as well. So, what we're going to talk about in the extended, we're going to start about talking about routes to market, which Mark mentioned earlier. We're going to kind of delve into, how you can get your book out there, and also a little bit of the magic behind the airside, sales in airports. We're also going to talk about how you can leave your agent in a good way, and we'll delve into that in a bit more, because Ivy said that she was quite surprised that she didn't realise that was the case. But I think even if you don't have an agent, it's super important that you understand the process all the way through, because sometimes it doesn't work out. We're also going to discover why no amount of hype and marketing and publicity can sell a bad book. And I know, Mark, you've got some things to say about that. We're also going to talk about that little throwaway quote at the end she said about David Bowie being 100% creative or 100% business focused. And we're going to delve a bit into what that means and how you can set your day up to maybe structure that. And finally, we're going to delve into my top few apps that I like to use for visual writing and planning. Ivy talks about the first draft, the zero draft, and I love to draw diagrams and for my very visual. So I'll be kind of revealing a few of those. So, folks, if you'd like to join us in the extended, and at the same time get that lovely, warm, good feeling of supporting this podcast, just pop along to bestsellerexperiment.com/support. So, Mr. Stay, what are the wins this week?
Lots from the Academy, some great stuff from the Academy. So Zoe Richards, who joined the Academy relatively recently, and I know she was worried about the edits that she was getting back from her publisher. She said, I did it. I finished my edits on time. I've just sent the manuscript back to my editor, Few. I know Zoe and I have had long conversations on in the craft coaching and in the weekly surgery about her edit, and it's brilliant. It's fantastic that she's got it in there. So congratulations, Zoe. Take a break, celebrate however you want to celebrate, but that is really, really good news.
Brilliant, Zoe. Well done.
And William Group, also in the Academy, says, I'm jumping on the wind bandwagon. The win bandwagon, not the wind bandwagon. I don't know what that is. He says, I finished the first draft of the third book in the Tainted War saga, and I've read the first two, and they're blooming awesome. It really, really good urban fantasy. So do check it out. William says, if it all goes to plan, it will be available at the beginning of the summer, just a year after book 2. Thanks to the 200 word a day chat challenge and the Bestseller Academy, I finished this in 1/3 of the time. Thanks for everyone's support. Brilliant. Fantastic stuff. Really, really big congratulations to you, William. That's fantastic.
And a great achievement as well. And just so excited to see where William's kind of series goes as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Anne Woodward in the Academy. As she said, at last I can share my news. Yesterday, I signed a contract with Northodox Press, who will be publishing my murder mystery novel under its new name, The Art of Murder. I am unbelievably happy and excited, and feeling a little bit sick, to be honest.
I love that. Oh my gosh.
And huge congratulations. I know she's been sitting on this news for quite some time. She hasn't been able to sort of let it out there, but that is brilliant. And I really, really look forward to that. It's going to be super.
So chuffed for Anne. And it couldn't happen to a nicer person as well. Anne's absolutely lovely. Such a lovely spirit.
Jackie Kirkham, talking about libraries earlier, she says, I have a win to share too, following in Gavin Ralph's and Kate Baker's footsteps. I went to the local library where I donated a couple of copies of my book, The Calm Place, a few weeks ago. They phoned me a few days ago to tell me the book had been catalogued centrally and was now out on the shelves, one in the local library, the other in the big library in the city centre. They also currently have an exhibition of historic photos and books about our little corner of Stirling. So I was interested to see that. When I got there today, I couldn't see my book on the local shelf, but never mind. Maybe someone had taken it out, blah, blah, blah. Then I went to the desk with the books I wanted to take out. The librarian told me that they displayed my book alongside the local history exhibition. They'd labelled it Book of the Month and made it clear it was by a local author. And she said it got snapped up and checked out almost immediately. I think this might be the first time it's being read by someone who doesn't actually know me. So definitely achievement unlocked, a day well and truly made. Libraries are amazingly. # support your library. Jackie, Book of the Month. Yes.
Perfect. Oh, what an amazing story. And Jackie was very kindly sent a copy over to me in Canada as well. And it's an absolutely beautiful book. It's so well written, and I'm so chuffed. That is, we were asking for library stories earlier, and there's one out the gate. So, folks, I love the idea of donating your book to the library. What a brilliant idea to do that, just to go along. You'd have to wait to find a publisher and hope it gets in that way. Just go and gift it to your local library. Fantastic.
Yeah. So, and the book is The Calm Place. We'll stick a link in the show notes so you can check that out. Another interesting achievement as well. Morgan Delaney got in touch. He's in the BXP group on Facebook. He says, now I know how Harry Styles feels. I'm on the cover of a magazine. He says, I've got a short story in Parsec, magazine number 8, which the editor kindly describes as a highly disturbing love/lust story. So check out the latest edition of Parsec magazine for a peek inside Laura's suitcase. You'll never look at luggage in the same way again. I'll stick a link in the show notes to that. But yes, there is Morgan's name on the cover with all the other authors. In fact, he's dead center with great positioning. So excellent stuff. Congrats on that, Morgan. Great stuff.
Fantastic, Mike. That's like an extended edition of wins this week. Absolutely brilliant. Well done to everyone out there. And look, if you've got some fun, happy and exciting news that you want to share with us, to share with the world, then please do drop us a note. And you can do that by simply going along to the contact form on our website, bestsellerexperiment.com. Drop a message to myself and Mark. We do read every message. So tell us something that you want to celebrate, big or small, because that's what we're about here. We want to celebrate your successes. Whilst you're there, click on the newsletter tab and sign up to the Bestseller Experiment newsletter and get weekly updates on everything that's happening at Bestseller Experiment HQ. And Mark, if people want to catch up with us on socials.
Yes, we're on Facebook, Bestseller Experiment, and Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. We are at Bestseller XP. And if you've been inspired by Ivy or any of the guests that we've had on the podcast, please subscribe, give us a rating, give us a review. And thanks as always to our editors, Dave and JD, who have a lot to do this week.
Brilliant, folks. So thank you so much for joining us. Do spread the word. If there's anything on this podcast that you think someone needs to hear, one of your friends, tell them about the episode, send them a link, spread the word, and help us inspire more writers to write their best books. And we look forward to catching up with you again next week, folks. So it's a goodbye from Mark 1.
And a goodbye from Mark 2. Bye.
Goodbye.